see the calls for a ceasefire have started, so that the usual script. I've not heard anyone call for a Hamas surrender. Nobody. Not one government, not one pundit has called for a Hamas surrender. It's like right, you've got yourself in a position here where you've committed an atrocity, a terrorist act, like a mass crime, and there's an element to, let's talk about the Holocaust, because we're in the same territory. You might think that I'm blowing things out of all proportion, but I will make a point. Jews killed in the Holocaust, what were they guilty of? Being Jews. So, in being exterminated, they were being punished for the crimes of others. They were innocents who were punished with death. Innocents, they hadn't done anything. The odd one of them, might have had it coming though. Seriously. In amongst the millions they killed, they might well have been in that group of people murderers. Real horrible people amongst that 6 million and more. A lot of Russians kill for being Russian. A lot of Germans kill for being German. It's like, do you sign up for that? Killing the individual, the person, for the crimes of others. Holding them accountable for the actions of their forefathers, cousins, relatives, neighbours, countrymen. And it's suddenly all right to go killing civilians. Just general, well, you're a Jew, well, it's fair game. It's like, if you can think that way, me and you are going to be forever in conflict, and likely your brothers in spirit, I've always been in conflict with them my entire life. That's something I could just never work out when people talk about accountability. And people say, accountability, full accountability, and it's like, oh, that's good. Yeah, I'll sign up for full accountability. That means I'm on the hook for all the things I've done and not for anything that anyone else has done. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. It wasn't my hand. It wasn't my scheme. It wasn't my plan. I am innocent of all of the historical boo-boos of the Western world, of men, of the British, of the English. Not on me. And if you try to accuse me of the crime of being English, you're trying to make me accountable for things that other people have done, you get a very nasty response from me. And a bit, my training with it is, it's like, I'm quite used to being, in real life, held accountable for the actions of all men who ever lived. And that, to me, be an absurdity that makes me blood boil. So when did I do this? Excuse me? Yeah, it's like I'm fully accountable. So it's like I don't take the blame for things I haven't done because of accountability. Come at me for things I've done. I've got enough trouble with my own. I've got enough trouble with my own based on my own deeds, my own actions, my own stupidity, my own fecklessness, my own wastefulness, my own laziness. I've got enough problems of my own. I don't need to be on the hook for, the actions of the historic, now in antiquity, British Empire. The thing had long since fallen apart by the time I was born. So that's my standpoint. Collective punishment, as they call it, collective punishment is a war crime. It's against your human rights. But all the time, we'll have a go at people for being white, black, Irish, whatever you want. In the eyes of scum, who are, in essence, people who just like to dominate, do violence, do killing, do murder, do rape. do what they want, they will use that as a justification to just do what they want, get what they want. They have to dehumanize you before they kill you. And it's like, you know what kind of household they were raised in? Well, one that's taught them that collective punishment is the right thing. So that's where you get Nazis from, that's where you get racists from, that's where you get fascists from. For punishing people for things they haven't done and starting off a cycle of this. That's what it is. So Nazis, when you say, well, what's typical of a Nazi? Well, they like to label people and then punish them for the crimes of their race. That's a Nazi. That's what they did. That's why the world went to war with them, because they found it rather abhorrent. And then it's like 50 and 60 years later, it just happens all the time. It's even more widespread now. Perpetually under attack, men and boys, for the actions of the very worst of the worst of the worst. I mean, the worst of the worst, they're in jail or dead, and it's like, well, fuck them. I'd have killed them for you if you'd have asked me. I would have killed them for you. I'd have put them in the ground. That's how much kinship I have with men who rape and brutalise defenceless people. It's like, yeah, give me a gun, I will shoot them and sleep like a baby. And when they beg for mercy, I'll listen to them, but I'll still shoot them. I've got no kinship with my sex, no kinship with my countrymen. If you drag a guy out and he's a plunderer and a marauder and a rapist and a murderer, like our happy friends who found their way into Israel, he needs to die. There's no kinship at all. He's a criminal, just a criminal, doing what he wants to do, giving himself an excuse to do it. Oh, well, the Jews, they're fair game because of what other Jews did. It's like, is your brain really that simple? Are you really that stupid, or do you just take advantage of a situation to do whatever you want? Well, it's a combination of both that makes the evil cocktail. And do you notice all that knee-jerk stupidity of, like, the do-gooder left? The do-gooder left have turned the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, because them are the two minds that are against each other here. Kill the Jew. Death to America. Kill the Jew. And it's like, okay, so what have they done? And they'll start to talk about 1,000 years of misdeeds by different people. So it's like them are the mindsets that are at war with each other. So we can never negotiate with you, can we? Because of this collective thing that you rely on for power. You can't be in power without the imaginary big bad wolf, evil Jew, as like one great big blob or entity. Without that to fight against, you've got no justification for the way that you behave towards your own. No excuse for the way you brutalise your own civilians. The way you spend all their money on weapons, mercenaries. Not a single call for Hamas to surrender. Give up their criminal gangster ways. Collectivism. We say all them knee-jerk reactions as well. First day of it, cheering it on. The old pro-Palestinian. Well, the pro-Palestinian people, those guys, it's been a matter of, I've been at it for a long time asking questions about this conflict. And every time it brews up, I find myself in conflict myself with people who will start to say, oh, well. And start to try to educate me about the reason for the struggle. And it turns out I know a lot more about it than they do. Tell me about the PLO. Tell me about Yasser. Tell me about Jordan. Tell me about Lebanon. Tell me about the tactics of ISIS. Tell me about the tactics of Hezbollah. Talk to me about how they go about doing it. How these terrorist organisations, they They demand the protections of private citizens right up until they decide to reach for war. You're up against rebels. You can't go up against them at all, really. It's like the criminals. They have to be dealt with by the police. The police are the correct people to deal with terrorists, and it's a matter of, yeah, but they've gun the police. We'd sacrifice our nations to the tyrants to have heavily armed cops in every corner because of terrorists. We're not willing to become that. So in that loophole, they're able to thrive. And then you've got people in the world, Marxist, who jump on the bandwagon late and have applied their critical theory to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And they've come to the conclusion it's the racist white people. The Jews are racist. The Jews are white supremacists. And then it goes even as far as, with that mindset, we're off into like right-wing territory to say, you know, the Jews might have had it coming. Hitler might have been right about the Jews. A number of people who come to me and they'll talk about, well, they have been kicked out of so many countries. And I'm like, hang on a minute. Tell me about a few of them. It's like half the countries they'll say they were thrown out of didn't exist as countries, as nations. When they were throwing Jews out, it's like, so how far we're going back here? 14. And that's a nation state, that, isn't it? Just saying, it wasn't a city then. It wasn't a country then, it was just a city. So some moneylenders were expunged from a city, and they're criminals, likely, fraudsters, blackmailing people. And you throw them out and you say, well, they kicked the Jews out. And it's like, no, they kicked out a lot of criminals, as, you know, right-minded people are always likely to do. We have to pretend that everyone was a raging fanatic for all of history, and that there was never a criminal justice system of some kind in place. Being, you know, the only reason why anyone would ever live in a city, the only reason why we have countries have got mandates to kill those who would prey upon you by tarring you all with the same brush. The security that the state's supposed to give you, all you want from the state is justice, police force, and for them to defend you from marauders. When the savages come over the hill, who go, well, it's just an Englishman. Well, your forefathers robbed my forefathers, therefore I'm paying back an old debt by killing you who's done no wrong. And those people turn up, that's why you have a state. Go and kill those fucking animals for us, will you? So, to my mind, there's only the Jews who understand it, really. Because they've had to live with it. They've had to adapt to it. They've had to put up with it. I read a story yesterday that an Egyptian policeman at a tourist attraction drew his sidearm and randomly opened fire into a crowd of Israeli tourists. Now, those Israeli tourists have been trapped in Egypt, haven't they, because of this war. And they're not guilty of anything other than spending money, being who they are. And some cop drew his sidearm, killed 2 of them, and killed the Egyptian tour guide. Injured a few more, just let rip, and was immediately arrested. It's like, was he overcome with some kind of religious fervour, or did he just have it in him as a cop to be a killer? And when he sees his chance to do what he wants to do and then be able to call it something different, to be able to call it jihad, he will actually take that chance and pay that price. It's like, oh, I get to be a hero now. I get to be a rebel now. It's like, I will never, ever stand for that. I will never back any cause that plays that game, ever. It's like, by all means, right? If some individuals, even I go as far as saying a gang or a group You know, organised gang or group, and their business is murdering. So it's an organisation like HAMAS, ISIS. Yeah, you deserve to die for being a member of that group. Even if you just watched, you deserve to die. Even if you just drove the car, you deserve to die. I'll hold you accountable for the company you keep. The company you keep. Not the town you came from, not the country you hail from, the company you keep. It's like you hear tale, don't you, of the innocent man goes to jail, and it's like, yeah, but the guy you were hanging around with, who you got arrested with, he wasn't an innocent man, was he? It's like, there are certain limits to accountability, you know, and you have to be held accountable for the company you're in. It's like you're going to jail for aiding and abetting this guy because you were there. You didn't stop him. It's no defence that you didn't know who you were dealing with. You're going to jail. That's as far as it goes. When they say prescribed terrorist organisation, that's what it means. It's like, these guys don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. These guys are all guilty as each other by their association, by the company they keep, not the flag they wave. It's where justice stops and starts. So all these lefties with, say, the knee-jerk reaction when they were putting it out, they call it like, hurrah, hurrah, the beginning of the Great Rebellion. It's like, hang on a minute. How do you feel about Jews? What have you just demonstrated there? It's okay because they're Jews. It's like, well, it's terrible that they were killed. And we don't like violence, but hey, you know, it's payback. Collective. The Palestinians have been made to collectively suffer. It's like, yeah, by their own government. By the people who are tasked to help them, who use your stupidity as a way to perpetuate their power. Blur the lines between state actor and criminal organisation like no one else has been able to do. And now all the lefties jumped on great victory. And it's like, even before the details had come out what this meant, what they'd done, they were already cheering it on. So at the minute, it's like they'll be doing their absolute best to try to backpedal, because I don't know if it's me, you know. But if you want to go on the PR offensive, because that's what Hamas do, they provoke, they'll do an atrocity to provoke the Israeli army to pummel them. And they don't suffer for it. They get themselves out of the way, and they leave the people in the streets to starve and fend for themselves. And say, look what the evil Israelis are doing to our poor innocent people. And that'd be the tactic. That'd be what they do. That'd be their way of doing war. And then calls are now coming in from the AOCs of the world for a ceasefire. End the senseless slaughter. What? And let them get away with it again. That's the victory. It's like they want a PR win. In their delusional brains, they think they can start a global jihad. They want to make their magical prophecies come true. They are crazy fanatics. A collective of fucking maniacs. It's like, no, what happens is, do you know it stops? Right? These people who are calling for a ceasefire and stop the bloodletting need to say, Hamas needs to surrender. Surrender for their atrocities and bragging about it. They need to surrender. Am I the only person who calls for Hamas to surrender so far? Yes. And likely, as I think the Israeli government might be saying something like, we want a unconditional surrender this moment in time. That's the right thing. That's the only thing for them to go for. They need Hamas. It's like, right, imagine this. It's to say we don't get it. We the English and the Americans, we don't get this notion of a government like them. Because it would be absurd now, wouldn't it? Where if it was Rochdale at war with its neighbouring town, firing shells at the next town to say, we've got to get Rochdale Council out next election. We've got to get Rochdale Council out. We have to vote them out. We can't just say, hey, Rochdale Council, you've overdone it here. You're shelling Bury. You need to step down. You need to surrender. You need to stop doing it. No. We'll have to get some local support up, and we'll have to make people aware, and we'll have to vote them out at the next election, and their election saboteurs are absolutely everywhere, and people who mouth off a bit too much get themselves in trouble. No, they need to surrender. If you had a rogue council, you would ask for them to step down. If you had a rogue government, if we had a rogue government in this country that was flag waving, raising the size of the military, and then turning our attention on a certain foe, like the Labour Party did with the Muslim population of Britain, if we had a meaningful, if we had a real government in them days, if we had a real opposition. So hang on a minute, what you're doing here is a little bit Nazi or fascist, isn't it? To hold like the people of Birmingham to account in some small way for the 9/11 attacks. Tony Blair, you put this country on terror alert for the dangers of the Muslim extremist. At the same time, handing them power. You victimise them, and then gave them special rights and privileges, where Islamophobia is now a crime, where once upon a time you guys were deliberately winding them up and deliberately targeting them and deliberately making them a target for government propaganda. This was the war on terror, wasn't it? It's only 15 years now, 10 years. 15 years ago. Declared the Muslim population of Britain to be, under the spotlight. Mosques. Oh, this is a terrorist training camp. Why? Have you seen what it says in this book they read from? Really? It's like we had years of that. We got used to it. We don't see ourselves as being fascists who hold people accountable and punish them for the crimes of others. We don't see ourselves as that. So when it happens on the other side of the world, we're at sixes and sevens because our moral compass, as say Britain and most of the people around, doesn't tell us what to do. Offers no instruction whatsoever because we're the same. Our country is the same, is like Hamas in a lot of ways. Oh, we'll show them. Never surrender. So you wonder why them lefty responses are so off. And look at Twitter, that Syria girl immediately just bang loses her mind. And it become completely black and white. Palestinians, good guys, they don't rape. They don't take prisoners. If they've taken hostages, they're treating them well. It's Israelis who torture prisoners. Here's a news story. Excuse me? You're going for a PR win like they are, trying to raise wider rebellion. The worst look in the world is to snatch young women off the street, rape them and kill them, and then put them on TikTok. That's just about the worst thing you can do where humans are involved. If you want to whip up bad blood, there's something about our nature that sees that as what we call an atrocity. That is not a good look. Now, to have mouthed off about the great Palestinian victory, not knowing what the victory was or what they'd been up to, was a grave mistake that proves a massive insight as to how these people's minds work. They are simplified creatures who believe that it's right to punish people for things they haven't done.